What's up, guys? You're watching NorCal Daily Driven. My name's Salim, and this is my channel. If you've seen some of the other videos, I've been doing a build basically on my 2010 ZR1. We're adding some more horsepower, so I went through some of the steps on the last video of what I've been getting into. On the last video, I basically pulled off the supercharger lid, and then I went and go ahead and pulled off the supercharger. While I had the supercharger off, I did some of the modifications, so I'll go ahead and go through what I did. I'm not going to show you obviously the step-by-step. I already got it wrapped up and put it back on, but I'll show you what I did bolt on while taking off the supercharger. So I had the Nick Williams 102mm throttle body. I put that on there. I put a 2.45 smaller pulley on the supercharger. That's from Grip Tech. It's got a coating. It's going to help with the to eliminate any belt slip. I got the Lingenfelter ported snout, ported by Kong Performance for a 102mm throttle body. So that's on there. I swapped out the fuel injectors on both sides, so all 8 injectors for fuel injector Dynamics 1050X injectors, so they flow 1050 cc's each. And right now, and then I slapped the supercharger back on there. I have the lid off still because I sent out the bricks, which are the intercooler bricks that sit here and here. And this pipe manifold goes on the front, and your water lines from your intercooler run to those, from your heat exchanger, run to those intercoolers, cools down the intake temp charge. So those need to go out to be welded with a reinforcement plate on them so that when the heat gets turned up, because you're spinning the supercharger faster, you're creating more boost, you get more heat, you don't want to melt the the intercooler bricks and send shrapnel into your motor. So those are getting welded up by Kong Performance. So I sent those out last Tuesday, I believe, or maybe 2 Fridays ago actually. So 2 Fridays ago, it got there last Wednesday. I'm hoping that Greg got them wrapped up or is wrapping them up and sending them back. I just came back from 4-day vacation in Hawaii, so I'm jumping back into what was going on here. Had the supercharger back on. My next step was the upgraded Edelbrock heat exchanger that replaces the factory heat exchanger, and also the Kong Performance hidden tank that sits behind the front bumper. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I've done so far. I had to remove the radiator shroud that sits up here, and then there's another plastic cover that sits here, and the heat exchanger sits across here. In order to do that, there was a couple of grommets, or I don't know what you call them, those plastic push pins basically that you have to pull out. The hoses run to the tank here. I had to remove those hoses. You have to unbolt the power steering cooler that sits on the bottom of that heat exchanger, as well as the plastic shroud over there that sits down here to basically deflect air or diffuse air into those coolers. So once you pull all that off, you get out the factory heat exchanger. So this is what that unit looks like, and there's the hoses that come off of it there. This is the plastic shroud that it gets bolted to. So what I'm going to do, since the new Edelbrock heat exchanger is not a plug-and-play operation, it's kind of like a custom thing. And it's not too custom. I mean, you're basically going to bolt the new heat exchanger to the same shroud, just the way it's bolted here. See, it's got 2 holes here, and then the studs go through. So you might be making a hole here and maybe reusing one of those holes, so we'll see. And then obviously you're going to be running some new hoses. But yeah, basically that's the step I'm going to do now. I know this how-to is very sought after because not a lot of people have information on how to bolt this Edelbrock heat exchanger in, because it's not a plug-and-play unit. A lot of people go with the D3P performance setup. It's a lot more higher end, a little bit more expensive. I didn't want to go that route. Like I said, I was trying to do a build on a budget, not cheap out, but more on a budget. I mean, you don't have to buy the most expensive parts out there. Yeah, you get what you pay for or whatever, but at the same time, I mean, these are tried and true parts. None of this stuff is budget. None of this stuff is budget. Just the Edelbrock piece is something that's not vehicle specific. So that's the only thing that we're custom mounting here. Everything else is plug and play, bolt in, no problem. Anybody could do this. I followed the Lingenfelter how-to on how to bolt everything up, or how to remove everything and how to bolt everything back up. So that was a walk in the park. If you've done modifications on cars before, I'd say it's like a 6 or a 7, just because it's a little bit more tedious. It's not hard, it's just tedious. So I'm gonna go ahead and see how the new heat exchanger sits next to this old one, or how it would sit in the shroud there. And then I'll show you guys a side-by-side comparison of how much more cooling capacity we're gonna get out of this heat exchanger. So I'll check back with you guys in just a second here. Okay guys, so here you go. This is a side-by-side of the Edelbrock and the stock heat exchanger. That's the stock one. This is the Edelbrock one. As you can see, we have about double the cooling capacity for the fluid that's going to be running through the heat exchanger. I mean, this thing is massive compared to this one, obviously. So that's going to sit in this shroud just like that one did. Maybe a little bit of modification, like I said. See, this one has these bungs that basically get bolted into, whereas these ones had these close bungs. So I might be able to catch one of the lower holes, and I might have to make a new hole up here and over there. And then, just gets screwed into the side here. Then it's basically one unit with the shroud, and then the shroud just gets clipped back into place. We're gonna have to make another hole, because you could see that there's an outlet at the top and an outlet at the bottom, or inlet and outlet, however you want to route it. So from what I understand, the top outlet sits on the passenger side, and the bottom outlet comes out on the driver's side. But I'll give you guys a closer look once I figure out the final routing for it. But yeah, just wanted to give you guys side by side, see what we're looking at here, what we're dealing with, and then I'll get back with you guys once I figure out a final bolt into the shroud. I'll give you guys a little run around of that, and then bolt back into the car, and then obviously the final routing of the hoses here. So check back with you guys in a little bit, and I'll let you know how far we get. Alright guys, so picking up where I left off yesterday, this is the second day, part 2 of this same video, working on the heat exchanger, mounting it to the existing shroud. So I just want to go over what I did here. I basically mounted the new Edelbrock heat exchanger in the plastic shroud that came with the car. I think it's pretty clean. I could have done a better job if I had a hole saw for the inlet and outlet of the heat exchanger, but I mean, I made it work. Let me give you an idea of what's going on here. So obviously the plastic is the existing shroud. I took some weather seal or a window seal here, and I put it all the way around the heat exchanger. So I got it on the side that mates up to the AC condenser, because I don't want it rubbing against each other, obviously. I got it on the back side just for whatever reason. I put it on the sides where I mounted it, just for extra protection here against the shroud, just to give it some cushion. And I'll show you where I made the holes. So this is going to be the top side. So if I stand it up like this, this is going to be the passenger side. It'll be the hose coming out of the top, and it goes to the water manifold coming out of the supercharger. And then that is the bottom side. So I made a hole on that side. That'll go out to the tank. And then to mount it, I put these holes in the side of the shroud, one there and one there. It's pretty close to the existing one on the bottom side there. I just had to put it in between the larger hole and the smaller hole. And I mean, it might not look the greatest, but it's very solid. I mean, I could pick this thing up, shake it around. It's all one piece. There's going to be no vibration in there. So there's 2 holes on that side that's mounting it to the bungs in the heat exchanger, and then 2 holes on this side. So let me put it down. Hopefully you guys are able to see this. So again, to give you an idea, that is the top side on the passenger. This is the bottom on the driver's side. The Edelbrock has 2 bungs on this side for screws and 2 bungs on that side. I basically drilled into the plastic. I used M6 by 1 times 16 millimeter. So M6 with the one pitch for the thread, 16 millimeters long. And then obviously I got some washers for it, so some M6 by 18 washers. And then I got some window seal to insulate it all the way around to provide some extra cushion. So I'm gonna go ahead and mount this, see how everything sits. I'll go ahead and mount it, see how everything sits with the factory AC condenser. Make sure there's nothing rubbing against it. Make sure it's pretty solid. I might reinforce it even more with another mount at the bottom here. Maybe here and here, coming out of some existing holes that I saw there. Might make a bracket out of some steel that I bought, and it'll mount here, and it'll be an L bracket basically, and it'll screw in there and on that side too. But first I'm gonna put it in to see if I'm gonna be able to even make that, obviously. And then obviously I also want to check the clearances for the holes that I made for the inlet and outlet to make sure I'll be able to slide the rubber hose over it for the fluid, obviously, and also put a clamp on it at the same time, because that's going to need some space. You're going to need to get in there while this is back in the car. I might put the hoses in now just to make it easier, but we'll see. So I just wanted to give you guys an update. I know this is the heat exchanger from Edelbrock. It's kind of a thing that nobody has a write-up on. There's some pictures and stuff, especially if you're part of the ZR1 Everything Facebook page. People provide some pictures, but not really a detailed step-by-step. So I just wanted to give you guys an idea of how I'm doing it based upon some pictures that I saw on there. So I'll pick up where I left off in a little bit. Alright guys, so I left off yesterday about to run the hoses or the lines for the heat exchanger and the Kong tank. So I went to the parts store, got a bunch of 3/4 inch heater hose. I got 9 feet of it, just in case I'm gonna need it. I doubt you're gonna use it all, but let me show you what I did here. I got a hose. That's the Gates part number, 19768. That works perfectly. Let me show you what I need it for. For this line here, it's already pre-molded. It's perfect fit. So this is your factory heat exchanger. This is, or factory coolant or expansion tank for the intercooler. This is the Edelbrock heat exchanger. So the line that comes out of the Edelbrock heat exchanger, I use that molded line, and then I use the factory GM fittings. I just cut off the hose they came off of from before and put on a hose clamp on it. So this is, I want to say 5/8 or 3/4 inch, but that's the part number from Gates. If you're looking for a Dayco hose, because I originally was looking for a Dayco hose, the part number was 88438. That's 88438, and it's the same hose. But since this store, O'Reilly's, didn't carry Dayco, they carried Gates. This is the equivalent part number, so 19768, and that fit perfectly, like perfect length, everything, no kinks, smooth. On to the other hoses. So this is the Kong expansion tank. So this is 1.25 gallons, hides behind the bumper, don't even know it's there. So this is 3/4 inch heater hose. This is also an easy one. Just get bulk 3/4 inch heater hose, comes out of there, smooth bend, no kink. 1/2 inch to 1.5 inch, or 1/2 inch to 1 inch hose clamps. Again, I use the stock GM fitting. I just cut off the hose it came from. I ran the heater hose to it and I clamped it on there, so it's on there tight. So from the top of that tank to the bottom of this tank, so that's one hose. And then from the top of the factory tank to the bottom of the new Edelbrock heat exchanger, so that's the molded hose. And then you have to run this long one. So this is again 3/4 inch hose, heater hose. I'm thinking this run maybe 4 feet. So anyway, it goes up. Hopefully I'm not too close here. So basically bottom of the Kong tank, up in through here. If you look up over here, it runs over the top. This is the shroud for the heat exchanger. So it runs over the top here and then back down under here. And right there, where those clamps are, is where the stock pump is. I'll give you a better view down here. So that hose coming from above that I ran across comes out right here. I got a 90-degree help fitting. Help 47063. It's by Dorman. You'll find this in most auto parts store. I know I got it from O'Reilly's. I'm sure AutoZone has it, but 47063. It's basically a 3/4 inch on both sides, 90-degree elbow. So I ran it into there and out the other side, then a short piece of 3/4 inch hose into the factory pump. So all these got clamps. So again, it's smooth, no kinks. I double checked it. It's a really nice line to run because it's tucked away. I don't have to run it across the front here. I don't have to make another hole in this shroud here. It won't get in the way of the bumper when I mount it back on here. So again, it routes right out of the pump. There's a hole that runs right through here. Comes up there, runs right across here, back down there, back down, and to the bottom of the Kong tank. The Kong tank came with this bracket. It's an L bracket. It basically uses the factory mounts for the stock tank, and it runs that bracket. Then you got one bolt that comes off that bracket and it mounts here, and then the other mounting location is right here. So that's where the fender and the bumper meet. So that'll bolt up all together later. And then this barb is for the hose, the bleeder hose that came with the Kong tank. So you're gonna need that, so when you fill that tank up, you need to bleed it, obviously, so that all the fluid, it gets full of fluid and you don't have any air in it. So just gonna sit here, give you guys a good idea of how the lines look again. So again, out of the bottom of the heat exchanger to the top of the stock expansion tank, that's that Dayco or Gates hose. And then, sorry guys, my allergies are killing me. And then from the top of the Kong tank to the bottom of the factory expansion tank, 3/4 inch hose, just clamps on it. I reused the GM fitting. You'll understand what I'm talking about when you take off this line. And then from the bottom of the tank, Kong tank, all the way across the top here, and then back down the other side into that pump with a 90-degree 3/4 inch on both sides, elbow, and then right back into the pump. And then for here, just like the factory heat exchanger, I bolted the power steering cooler right to the bottom of it. The only thing I had to do was enlarge this hole on the power steering cooler bracket, just so that I had some adjustment in order to bolt it down. But just like factory, it's perfect. I mean, it's not sticking out. This little shroud is gonna go right here. It's gonna run something like that, I believe. And then, you know, the bumper comes and covers everything back up. But again, guys, I wanted to really detail this part of the install because not a lot of people have information on this. I know I looked for information for a long time. I went through a lot of pictures on the ZR1 Everything Facebook page, and I was able to track down enough pictures and send enough messages to some of the members that have already run it and got this diagram from them. So hopefully you guys find it helpful if you're gonna run this on your ZR1. I got one other line to run, and that's basically gonna be out of the top of the Edelbrock heat exchanger. I'm gonna use this U fitting, and then from here, this is all 3/4 inch hose. It's gonna get a transition from 3/4 inch to 5/8, and you need 5/8 because that's what the stock hose is. Right here, this is going to get cut off from right here, or maybe right here I should say, and then this is going to run into the factory water outlet, which is right here. It's going to be one of the fittings on one of these, and then obviously that gets plugged into the top of the lid. And you want to reuse this piece because right here is where you open this valve up in order to fill the tank. So that's a Phillips head screwdriver. You open this up and you'll pour the water in, and that'll fill up the heat exchanger, that'll fill up the factory tank, and then in turn it'll fill up the Kong tank. But I think it'll make it easier to fill the Kong tank with the hose that comes with the Kong tank. So let me show you that. So this is the hose that Greg Kong sends with this tank. So that goes into that top fitting. This is going to go up somewhere up top. You're going to tuck it away somewhere so that, you know, it can't be seen. But obviously, valve open, you could fill it, you could bleed air out of it, whatever you want to do. Valve closed, everything's closed off, right? Valve open, valve closed. So I'll probably use this to fill the Kong tank just because it'll probably be easier that way. And then I'll use the factory fill to fill the heat exchanger, and then possibly the smaller tank. But we'll see. Either way, I'm going to use as much inlets as I can in order to get the air out of the system. So again, guys, sorry for the run-on stuff here, but I know this part needs to be detailed. If anybody's going to be doing this is going to help you out a lot. I know if I had this video or someone did a video like this, I'd appreciate it a lot. So hopefully you guys appreciate it too. So once I get the final routing and everything, I'll put that in this video as well. Alright guys, sorry this video is so choppy, but I just wanted to pick up where I left off. I wanted to show you guys the final routing of all the water lines that came from the heat exchanger and the water pump basically for the intercooler to the inlet manifold. I got it all wrapped up here, but I'll show you how it turned out. So this was that loop I was talking about that comes out of the top heat exchanger, the top of the heat exchanger, and it goes from a 3/4 inch to a 5/8 fitting. And then I cut the stock hose at that elbow, and then I use hose clamps on both sides. And then I'll lift the cover off here so you guys could see. So as you can see, it comes out of the top here, it loops, then it goes into the top of the water inlet, and the other one comes down there from the pump. That's this factory hose. I never touched this, it was on the pump the whole time, and it goes right back into the lower outlet. And then yeah, that's pretty much it. That's how it routes. And then you put the shroud back on for the radiator cover and everything. And then you have to bleed the system, so you unscrew this with the Phillips head. I put a hose over the top of it, 1-inch hose. I clamped it on here, and it basically set up this high with a funnel. And then that's how you fill it. Let me show you what it looks like. Sorry guys, it wasn't on hand here. But this is what it looks like. Hopefully you guys could see that. It's basically a funnel with a 1-inch clear silicone hose, and then a clamp on the end of it. So it's sat like that, and you want to hold that hose up, this hose here, as high as possible up in the air so that you could get the water to flow into the intercooler bricks as you're filling it up. And then you just basically keep pouring water in there. You crack these bleeders on the inlets or the water manifold, and as soon as water comes out of here, you know that the intercooler bricks are filled up. Sorry, if the water comes out of these bleeders, you know that the intercooler bricks are filled up, so you'll close those and then keep filling until you know that your tank is filled up over there. And the way I knew that my tank was filled up, since I have the Kong tank, this was that bleeder hose that comes out of the Kong tank. You see it's got that valve on top. You'll keep filling it until water comes out of the top of this bleeder, and then you know your whole system is filled, because the tank on this end sits behind the bumper. The tank on this end that sits behind the bumper is the last point of fill, basically. It's the last thing to get filled up, because the stock tank is here and the Kong tank is here. So the way the water flows, the Kong tank will be the last thing to fill. So once the water comes out of there, you're all done. And then that's pretty much it, guys. You might have to check it later, top it off after you get the car running. Other than that, that's pretty much it. It should cool a lot better than factory. After you do multiple pulls, the water temperature should come back to a normal temp. It'll stabilize a lot faster than if you had just the stock tank and the stock heat exchanger, because now we do have a lot more cooling capacity. You got another 1.25 gallons, and then also whatever the extra amount of space in the heat exchanger is. So maybe you got another half a gallon inside because of the heat exchanger is bigger. So a lot more fluid, you got a lot more heat dissipation, a lot more heat transfer, so your IAT temps stay a lot cooler. Anyways guys, I know this was a long video and it was all over the place, but hopefully you guys got a lot of use out of it, you got some information out of it. The next video will be this thing going to the tuner, and then getting dyno tuned 491 and E85, and then my first impressions of how it drives. So until then guys, thanks for hitting that play button. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. If you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button. Until the next one, enjoy the ride.